Hello and welcome to another episode of the Don't Get Me Going podcast. My name is Zoe Lulinski, and today we'll just be talking again. I'll be giving my top 10, talking about some of the more interesting games from Week 11. There were a couple ones that I mentioned in previous episodes that I'll get back into and give my opinions on. That's just about it. Another interesting thing, there are no longer any undefeated teams in the league. The Kansas City Chiefs just lost to the Buffalo Bills this week. Really interesting game there. So getting into it, here's my top 10. At number 1, I have the Detroit Lions. They've been at 1 for the last few weeks now for me, and there's really nothing they're showing that will change anything. They scored 52 points against the Jaguars and held them to 6. I don't know. I don't remember the last time I saw a team score 52 or 30 plus this many times in the season. Looking at my notes, they've scored just this season 42, 47, 31, and 52 twice. That's just insane. I don't think I've seen many teams score in the 50s, let alone do it twice in one season. And they're just beating up on every single one of these teams, which, of course, is what a good team is supposed to do against bad teams. But they're also beating the good teams. They've lost once to the Buccaneers really early in the season, and since then have not stepped off the gas. And they look like easily the number 1 team in the league right now. They're the scariest team to play against. At number 2, taking over the Chiefs spot are the Buffalo Bills. Like I said, the Buffalo Bills beat the Kansas City Chiefs this week in a very hyped up game. The rivalry between the Chiefs and the Bills with Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes has always been fun to watch. The series coming into the game was 4-3. Chiefs have won 4 of the games. Buffalo has won 3. The Chiefs usually dominate them in the playoffs, whereas the Buffalo Bills usually dominate the Chiefs in the regular season, from what we've seen. And that looks to be the same thing. The Bills every week are just getting better and better. I think they're meshing better together. Josh Allen, in my opinion, is an MVP candidate. I think he is the leading candidate for MVP at the moment. So yeah, Bills at number 2. Chiefs, they lost the game. They're 9-1 at number 3. I think that's a good spot to put them. They've gotten lucky here and there in a couple games, but like I've mentioned before, I think a team like them, they have experience, they know how to win, and that's really all that matters. You look at teams like the Bears or the Bengals where they're getting in these very close games and then just losing it at the end. That could be a coaching problem, that could be an experience problem, but we know that the Chiefs know how to win, and that's a really big part of what makes a team good versus great, or even bad versus good. At number 4, I have the Eagles. The Eagles continue to get better every single week. They started off the season slow, as we saw, but they're starting to play like we originally expected them to. Thursday night, they beat the Commanders 26-18. I think this is something concerning to look at for the Commanders, and I'll get into it a bit later. But the Eagles, in a big divisional game like that, stepped up, continuing to play well. Jalen Hurts has been phenomenal the last few weeks. And yeah, I'm moving them from 5 to 4 from last week. At number 5, I have the Steelers. Again, they just beat the Ravens, another big divisional game. The Ravens are also top 10, so that's a really big game to watch. Kind of gives you a glimpse into the future on what playoff look for these two teams. That defense is dominating. The Steelers' defense is what carries the team. George Pickens and Russell Wilson have been really connecting. George Pickens, I think, has made huge strides this year in general. I think he's getting up there in the receiver conversations. At number 6, I have the Vikings. The Vikings' defense swarmed the Titans. They dominated the Titans this week, as they should. Obviously, they're, again, dominating bad teams, which is what good teams should do. But that defense, they're top 5 in a lot of categories. They're one of the top defenses this year. They had a couple rough weeks a couple weeks ago, got back to where they should be, and Sam Darnold also rebounded from his last few weeks. They're in my opinion, overperforming from preseason expectations, but they're playing insane. That defense is not a defense you want to go against. They had 5 sacks against Will Levis against the Titans this week. Great front 7. Brian Flores, the things he does with that defense is just insane, and a main reason why they're where they are. At number 7, I have the Ravens. At number 8, I have the Packers. They are raised up a spot from they were last week, but that is only because the Commanders have not beaten a team over 500, and I think the Commanders are definitely overrated. I did give in to their hype a few weeks ago, but I think the Commanders are overrated. They're a really solid team. They've made huge strides, but with a rookie quarterback, there's only so much experience you have, especially coming from a team who had around 3 wins last year. They're making major strides, and I think they're going to be, in the future, a major team to worry about. But right now, I think they're just outside the top 10. But getting back to the Packers, they got, in my opinion, outplayed by the Bears this past week and got lucky on a blocked field goal. Of course, that also comes with their preparation. I think they had a great preparation heading into that game. A lot of the players saying they looking at film, they were sure they'd get a block, and I mean, look at what happened. They got the game-winning block against the Bears, but that doesn't take away from the fact that Caleb Williams outplayed Jordan Love and had an amazing 2-minute drill at the end of the game to set the Bears up for a spot to win. That's all you ask of a rookie quarterback, so I think he did a great job. But I don't think the Packers showed anything to show that they would move up in the power rankings this week, but they also did enough to stay where they are. And then new to the top 10 rankings, I have the Chargers. Chargers have looked really good. They just beat the Bengals this past week. They're 7-3. I think Jim Harbaugh is doing a really great job with the team. They're playing pretty well right now. And then at 10, I have the Broncos. They've had a couple tough losses these past few weeks against the Ravens and Chiefs, but I mean, Bo Nix, I think, is overperforming from expectations, and they're around 5-6 right now in the wild card spot, or near it at least, and I think they're a top team in the league right now. Honorable mentions, I've mentioned the Commanders already, but the Commanders, Cardinals, and Texans, I think all 3 of these teams have the potential to be really good, but they're just missing a few things. The Texans, that offensive line needs to get fixed if they're going to be competing in the playoffs and going on a deep playoff run. Cardinals and Commanders, they have a few holes here and there, but they're looking really solid. They're just a little inconsistent. The Cardinals are either winning big or lose. It's like opposite my expectations every single week. And then the Commanders just haven't beaten a team above 500 yet. I'm a little worried about that. They've looked really good so far, though, and I think they have, like I said, a good future ahead of them. Getting into the Bears game, just quickly, I touched on it already. I think the Bears outplayed the Packers this past week, and they lost 19-20 against the Packers after that blocked field goal kick at the end for the Packers to win it. I honestly just think it comes down to late game time management. This is the second time this year it's happened with the Bears where it's, the Commanders game with that Hail Mary, the plays leading up to the major play. I don't even think it is those major plays. Of course, they're confident in Caro Santos' ability to score a 46-yard field goal. He's done it, and of course, the percentages go up as he gets closer. I mean, he's 100% within 40 yards. Not to say doing an extra play the play before when you still have 30 seconds left would have gotten you that many yards, but just getting a little bit closer, getting to the right spot on the field that makes Caro Santos the most comfortable to kick, I think could have made a difference. I think it's an interesting decision to run down the clock with 30 seconds left, and we saw it with other games even this week with the Chargers and a couple other teams being aggressive at the end of half, being aggressive at the end of the game to ensure that your team is in the right place to win. The Bills did it as well against the Chiefs, making sure that they'd beat the Chiefs, a big game. This is a big game. This is one of the biggest rivalries in the history of football. The Packers and Bears are the 2 oldest teams in the league, so I think, in my opinion, in that situation, you do whatever you can to win. And, of course, they thought they were in position to win. That's why they didn't opt in to run another play. But it ultimately led to them losing the game, and I think it also goes to show good execution by the Packers, although I will say I think there was a flag on that last play on that field goal. I'm not going to get too deep into it, but Lucas Van Ness pushing all the guys, I don't think that's allowed anymore from the back, like a tush-push defense, and then, pretty much tackling the center before he gets his head up. I don't think that's allowed either. But, Bears players got called on it previously. And another topic I want to just touch on from this game, I think it was a really interesting game to watch, actually. And it was a really fun game to see Williams and Love face off against each other. Thomas Brown took over offensive coordinator, play calling duties as the Bears fired Shane Waldron last week. It was the first time we were able to see him. He actually did the same thing last year for the Panthers. And, I mean, the turnaround we saw from the Bears offense this week I think is really encouraging. I really want to see where it goes from there, especially with these top games the Bears have coming up. They're playing the Vikings and Lions these next 2 weeks here. I mean, just the difference we saw seeing Dgmg get involved. There were 6 guys that got the ball for the Bears this past week, and just getting your top guys involved is a major difference maker in an offense, and I think we saw that in the game. Thomas Brown calling plays from higher up in the box instead of on the field, I think also is something most offensive coordinators do, so it was nice to see that he's doing that. And I think just a major thing to take away from this game is Thomas Brown seems to be getting Caleb Williams' development back on track. These last 3 weeks, the Bears didn't score a single touchdown, and obviously that's not all at fault of Caleb Williams, but just seeing the development, some of those big-time throws, especially that 2-minute drill at the end to get the Bears in field goal range at the end of the game, that's just something you want to see from a rookie quarterback, and I think Thomas Brown is getting him back on track where you'd want to see him. The Bears have had 6 games in the last 2 years where they have a 95+% chance to win at the end and end up messing something up, whether it's play calling, whether it's execution, something, and they have lost all 6 games, and that is a 1 in 68 million chance. I don't know who has it worse than Bears fans over the last 5 years, decade or so. I mean, you can go back to 2018 even with the double doink. I think it's insane. I praise any people out there who are Bears fans and continue to stick with the team. Getting into some more recent news, though, the Jets have fired their GM, Joe Douglas. They're really cleaning house, especially with the firing of Robert Saleh earlier in the season. I think they're really resetting, and I don't see them sticking with Aaron Rodgers. I think they're just going to do a complete revamp of the team. They're 3-8, and Rodgers has actually been a big part of it. So I could see them completely revamping, going with new quarterback this offseason. One other big game I want to look into, I've already mentioned this a little bit, but the Chargers versus Bengals game. The Chargers won 34-27. It was a really, really fun game to watch Sunday night. And just the big topic I want to talk about, I don't think I've seen a quarterback wide receiver duo with the Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase that have been this good and still losing games and been so bad in the season so far. They're 4-7, and 6 of those 7 losses have been a 1-score game. If you look at their schedule, they have not had an easy schedule. Their division also has 2 top 10 teams in it, so that's not going to make it any easier. But for 6 of their 7 losses to be a 1-score game, I think it's about time eventually you have to look at all aspects of the team to see what's going on, especially with Joe Burrow having a case for MVP. I mean, being 4-7, I think that's hard to put yourself in the conversation, but when do you see that? When do you see a quarterback playing this well? I mean, a team's run around a quarterback, so I think making changes on defense, making changes to the coaching staff, I don't really know, but I think it's something they need to look into. And then, like I mentioned, the Chiefs were handed their first loss this past week against the Bills. Looking at the Chiefs' remaining schedule, there's 7 games left in the season. I could see them losing 2 to 3 more. There's a couple good teams here and there, especially in their division. The AFC West has surprisingly been actually a really good division this season. I don't think we expected both the Chargers and Broncos to be as good as they are. The Chargers are 7-3 right now, and the Broncos are 5-6. I have the Chiefs losing against both the Steelers and Chargers in this last stretch of the 7 games here, and then winning out the rest. They're 9-1 right now, and I have them finishing at 14-3. There's a couple games in there that could go either way with the Broncos. I do have them beating the Broncos in the last week of the season, and that's just more of an experience thing. I think at the time the Broncos will be fighting for a playoff spot, but Bo Nix is young. I think there's still progression to go through. Chiefs usually tend to go on big runs towards the end of the season, especially heading into the playoffs. Depending on if they do end up sitting their players or not at that last game, I think could also be a difference on whether or not they win or lose that game. the Texans' offensive line looks right now, I don't see the Texans being able to pull it out. That defense is insane. So, I mean, Patrick Mahomes has not fully performed as well as he has in the last few seasons. So, if they could do anything to the offense, especially with the injuries they have, however, Isaiah Pacheco should be back by then. They'll definitely have some of their guys back, so that'll be a fun game to watch. The Steelers' defense is insane. I think they've been going on a big run. I think they'll upset, or at least I think they'll end up beating the Chiefs and then the Chargers. I think the Chargers are going on a big run. It's a big divisional game. Divisional games could always go back and forth, even if it's bad. Divisional games, you play each other twice a year, so they have a lot of experience against each other. Jim Harbaugh is the head coach of the Chargers now. I see the Chargers beating the Chiefs, so really interesting schedule there. I think that schedule actually ended up being a little harder than I expected it to be. A few weeks ago when I saw their schedule, I didn't think it was too hard, but looking at it now, they have 3 teams that are in the top 10 of draft order right now. And then the other four are all teams going to be fighting for a playoff spot. So that's it for me today. Don't get me going. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.